This is America's day.
The inauguration of Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States and the transfer of power, the result of a contested, contentious election that raised a question in the minds of many Americans. Their assertion was that this election system is broken. Is it?
I don't think it's broken. It can use improvement.
This week, a look at the election next time.
What are we learning about people's natural ability to fight off this virus?
We all have, to varying degrees in our immune system, something called innate immunity.
And as coronavirus cases continue to increase, we take a look at some amazing treatments for those who fall ill.
There is a lot of studies that have been going on with convalescent plasma. There's also multiple monoclonal antibodies and cocktails of antibodies that have been moving forward.
Soldiers came on horseback.
Custer's 600 and so men, they were all mounted.
And a look back at a battle nearly 150 years ago.
Tell the general to come, we won't run this time. So the fight was on. And this is where it ended, essentially here.
We share the history of Custer's last stand. Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. After the chaotic 2020 elections, there are bipartisan calls for election reform, but little agreement between the political parties as to what the reforms should be. The first bill brought by the new Democrat-led Senate, the For the People Act. It's the liberal version of what changes should take place. But how likely is election reform in America? Scott Thuman takes a look.
We're just in an unsettled place, right? We don't know where we're going.
Well, the election coming down to just a handful of states now.
It was an election season like no other.
Now I've got to say, I'm working my ass off here.
Staged against the backdrop of a global pandemic.
We can and we will control this virus.
With complaints of paused counts, record mail-in votes, blocked observers, and an overnight flip in results.
CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president of the United States.
Joe Biden will win, putting him over the 270 electoral votes he needs to become the 46th president of the United States.
The result didn't stop the anger and arguments. If anything, they got worse.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election.
The bitter post-election period marked by dozens of court cases that went nowhere, accusations of a stolen vote, and new polls suggesting that 2 months after the election, 38% of Americans still don't think the election results are accurate.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of the vote for the state of Rhode Island?
The last formal process of an American election, the count and ratification of state-by-state votes in Congress, was itself violently interrupted. America has been a democratic constitutional republic for longer than any other nation, but our system is not without problems and flaws, and it does evolve. After each election, there are always lessons learned. A lot of what people were there pushing was what they claimed was this stop the steal. That was their movement. In a larger sense, their assertion was that this election system is broken. Is it?
I don't think it's broken. It can use improvement.
Walter Olson is a senior fellow at Washington's Libertarian Cato Institute. He studies constitutional law and elections. Though he rejects claims of a stolen election, he says the discussion is vital.
It's important to keep fraud out. Fraud has happened in American history and not just in the distant past.
Just hours after the Capitol was reopened, senators made impassioned pleas for unity. But perhaps lost in the torrent of news that day, the bipartisan calls for electoral reform, with partisan differences about what those reforms should be.
The peaceful people in my state in Oklahoma want their questions answered, but they don't want this, what happened today. They want to honor the constitutional process, but they also want to have debate about election security because they want to make sure it's right.
We need automatic voter registration. We need online voter registration. We need same-day voter registration. We should make Election Day a federal holiday.
But the reality is, though Congress can write laws, it's the state's job to manage elections. Already some are working on changes for the next election. In Georgia, the Republican Secretary of State was both lauded and criticized for rejecting President Trump's efforts to overturn a Biden victory. But in the future, his office may lose the power to manage elections in a series of proposed changes expected to be considered by the Republican-dominated state legislature. In Maryland, Republican Governor Larry Hogan is focusing on an area that's been a source of dispute and court challenges for years: electoral districts. Both Republican and Democrat lawmakers in Texas have suggested changes. One would limit the governor's power to alter voting rules during an emergency situation like a pandemic. In New York, the controlling Democrats want to make absentee voting easier and provide ballot drop boxes for all future elections. And there's broad public support for some adjustments. In a U.gov survey managed by MIT's Election Lab conducted after the 2020 vote, paper backups for voting machines and stronger voter ID requirements were two of the most popular changes. Also a notable result of the survey, a stark fall in the faith that GOP voters have that votes were counted properly, with just 23% of Republicans saying they were very or somewhat confident, down from 80% 4 years ago. To understand how elections can be flawed and then fixed, look no further than Florida, where George W. Bush narrowly beat Al Gore.
Florida, of course, in the year 2000 was the center of the world's attention because it didn't do a very good job of counting and confirming and recounting its votes.
Came down to 537 votes.
It did, and that would be a headache either way, but the way that Florida counted was also a problem. So Florida learned, and this is something that where both parties to some extent wanted a solution. They didn't want to put their state in that position again. And so Florida this year was one of the best performing states.
In fact, Olson says the speed of the count is one of the lessons that should be learned from 2020, because a slow count can sow doubt.
Here you saw some states getting essentially full count the very first night or shortly thereafter, and you had other states that took days, painful days, in which large cities or counties within the state didn't get their returns in until much later. Now, when they reported, the state's outcome changed. We saw that in several of the states that were challenged by Trump's supporters. So I think everyone should be looking for ways to get that vote counted earlier.
Though some argue instances of election fraud or irregularities are few, falling levels of trust in the process by some could spell trouble in the future.
Perception becomes part of people's reality, and they need to learn in the information world that we live in. They need to have a better understanding of how to figure out fact from fiction.
Paige Alexander is CEO of the Carter Center in Atlanta, the organization founded by former President Jimmy Carter that's best known for its work promoting democracy around the world. In nearly 40 years, they've monitored 113 elections overseas.
The U.S. is a real outlier. We've got our neighbors to the north and the south, Mexico and Canada, who have independent electoral administrators. We do this in almost every country. We have central election commissions that we work with, and that really allows us the ability to have a uniform system that we are tracking. Here in the United States, it's 50 different elections. In Georgia, it's 159 different counties. Many times, it actually comes down to the county level. And so it's very hard to keep an understanding of exactly where we are tracking different rules and regulations if they're changing so much. And so I think as we look at, if we were to crystal ball what we're able to bring forward from our overseas experience, much of that would be a central election commission, an independent, non-political system that sets up an election program that allows everybody to follow the same rules.
In the end, Olson sees the state-by-state election system in America as more of a strength than a weakness.
The Constitution is actually, I think, quite wise in keeping this decentralized. It means, for one thing, that there's no single lever to pull to make things go wrong if someone has bad intent. It means that states can experiment, as they have, with different methods and discover by trial and error which ones work well. And we've seen a great deal of that. There have been dozens of different voting machine systems and vote count systems. Some of them have been kind of disastrous. But imagine Washington prescribing the disastrous one for everyone to use the same day.
For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman.
Since real reform is most likely to happen at the state level, New York is already moving a bill through its legislature that would make absentee ballot voting easier and count those ballots earlier. Coming up on Full Measure, promising new treatments you may not have heard about that are proving to work against coronavirus. Beyond the vaccines, some novel new treatments for coronavirus seem to be working. We get the latest from Dr. John Dye, Chief of Viral Immunology at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. Aside from the vaccine, what are some promising therapies that are now being used or that you see on the horizon?
So the steroid treatments that are going on in hospitals right now seem to have great effects.
Why is that?
So basically you're amping up your immune system to be able to control the virus better. It's basically priming your system so that you're able to control. There is a lot of studies that have been going on with convalescent plasma, where you take product from a person who has survived the infection prior and has nice high neutralizing antibody titer in their blood, and then provide that as a treatment. That seems to be working very well. There's also multiple monoclonal antibodies and cocktails of antibodies that have been moving forward from Abcellera and Eli Lilly, from AstraZeneca. They're moving these products forward, and they are actually in phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials.
How do you get antibodies? If that's not a vaccine, is that an injectable, though?
That's an injectable, right. So you would actually IV, have it hooked up, and you would receive the dose, and then basically you would be providing the antibodies that are generated from a vaccinated individual directly into you. And I think there's always going to be a place for a treatment like that, because I don't know if you're always going to have 5 to 10% of the people, even if you have a 95% efficacious rate, that aren't responding to the vaccine, don't develop it, so you still need to have something to offer them if they do get sick.
How long does that last, do we know?
So most of the monoclonal antibodies that are moving into treatment are from human. So they're human monoclonal antibodies. So they normally last between 21 and 28 days in the bloodstream. So you would be protected, that would do its action for 21 to 28 days. But in that time, you would expect, let's say you were sick, you received the treatment, your own immune system would start to kick in as well, and then you would be able to control it beyond that. So it's more getting you over the hump to allow your own immune system time to respond to control that virus.
What are we learning about people's natural ability to fight off this virus?
We all have, to varying degrees in our immune system, something called innate immunity. And those are the interferons, there's NK cells, there's a lot of scientific-y, jargony terms that basically are your ability to fight off an infectious agent independent of what that agent is. So there are people who have high interferon gamma, high interferon alpha, beta levels that are already in their system for whatever reason, that they're able to keep the viral replication down to allow them to be able to control the virus easily.
And there's studies being done to try to figure out what sort of things might exist in a person's body.
I saw a very interesting study where it looked at the genetic level, what proteins in people who were asymptomatic that they were generating over time, and they narrowed it down to 5 genes that in a certain subset of people that did not develop, they knew they had COVID, but they didn't develop symptoms, that these were highly regulated genes, they had high production. So they're starting to dissect that problem and understand, because then that gives us an idea. Well, if you know gene X, Y, and Z provide protection, can we artificially boost gene X, Y, and Z in everybody? So then it's not really a vaccination, you're just boosting the innate immune system to be able to control the infection in general.
What do we know about how long immunity lasts if you've had coronavirus and become sick with coronavirus versus the vaccine we know for a couple months out may last longer? What about for natural?
We're still developing that data set. We have to look at reinfection rate, because there are cases where people have been reinfected with the virus, and then what is the severity of that infection? What's the immune status of those individuals?
When I looked at some research a couple of months ago, the reinfection was so rare that it was written up as part of a study when it occurs. And so the consensus was, as of that point in time, that at least for the period of 6 to 9 months or maybe a year, most people seem to have immunity if they've had an infection.
That's what we hope. Right now, they're the one-offs, where you have a person who's reinfected. It's not something that's occurring on a very good, regular basis, which is a very good thing, which means that your immune system is developing through that first infection or through a vaccination the protection it needs to be able to control that virus the next time we see it.
There are hundreds of coronaviruses. Dr. Dye says he and his team are working to develop what they call pan-coronavirus treatments and therapeutics that would work on multiple types at once, so scientists don't have to start from scratch if there's a next time. Ahead on Full Measure, we'll take you to Custer's last stand. In June 1876, a band of Sioux and Cheyenne Indians, led by Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, defied federal orders to return to their reservations. Several hundred U.S. Army troops, led by Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, were sent in. They were quickly overwhelmed and killed by up to 3,000 Indian warriors. Custer's last stand is marked today at the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument in Montana. When we were in the neighborhood, we got a tour from local historian Put Thompson.
The government is coming out here to enforce a police order that would force these tribes back to the Great Sioux Indian Reservation established by the Treaty of 1876. And, you know, these Sioux, Cheyenne, Arapaho said, we're not going back. Tell the general to come, we won't run this time. So the fight was on. And this is where it ended, essentially here. The archaeological evidence pretty much pointed to almost a run-for-your-life situation. And the far end of the battlefield, what we call Calhoun Ridge, according to the burial party that would scour this land, they said that that was the only organized resistance was at that far end of the battlefield, and then everything else was a mixture of officers and companies and across the entire battlefield.
Soldiers came on horseback and maybe some on foot and just marched or came into this area.
This Custer's 600 and so men, they were all mounted.
Did they think they were coming here to round up the Indians and take them somewhere?
No. At that time, the military would attack the village, and they would burn the lodges, destroy the food caches, kill the ponies, and cripple these people, these hostiles as they were called, to go back to the reservation and be forced to come under the government.
Did the Indians have guns?
Oh yes, they had better weapons. Most historians will say they had better weapons than the military because, and we even know that there were gun runners, you know, supplying these to the Indians, and they were good repeating rifles, Henrys. In fact, right over this ridge, right back over here, they call it Henryville. There were so many Henry cartridges found there from those repeating weapons. And so from the very first shots fired would have been down at the Reno battlefield, and they would have heard that rapid fire. So the psychology of that starts to turn, you know, and yeah, definitely a disadvantage. The military was armed with the approved rifle at that time, a single shot.
Let me ask you philosophically, who's seen as the good guys and who's seen as the bad guys?
I think most historians would tell you through history that has come full circle back to Custer is the bad guy, and yet his orders were to do exactly what he was doing. And yet you know, both parties could suffer the effects of that, you know, condemnation.
What does Custer's last stand refer to?
Well, this was his last battle, and he's usually pictured standing, you know, as if this is this is the last time I'm going to stand. And you know, some Indian stories have him actually shot at the river before the battle started. So that historical analysis is not quite accurate necessarily. He might have been shot at the river and disabled right there before it actually got going.
This is sort of symbolic, this gravesite area standing for where some people were found.
Right.
The soldiers.
Yes. It merely marks where men were found, and like I say, most are somewhat accurate, but Custer was found closest to the top of the hill, so as you can see, they moved these off to make way for the mass grave. But they say 42 officers and men were found here, so some of these have been brought inside the fence to have the visitors understand how many were found killed here.
What does this show?
This monument was placed here for over 200 men that were killed with General Custer, Lieutenant General. And it is in a mass grave. The grave below this contains the remains of almost all of those. Some officers, including Custer, were buried elsewhere. I would describe it as it's a somber place, full of spirits, and the best lesson would be that history will not repeat itself.
Custer was 36 when he was killed. Around 30 Indians were said to have died in the battle. When we come back, a look at what's up next week on Full Measure. Coming up next week on Full Measure, there's a growing number of states entering the competition to lure Hollywood dollars. That involves sweeteners like tax credits to filmmakers willing to leave the confines of LA and set up shop in far-flung locations such as Montana.
And this is all because of the tax credits that Montana passed, which we helped lobby for. And this now turns Montana into a super movie industry.
A growing number of states reaching for the stars next week on Full Measure. Now there are several ways to watch Full Measure from home or on the go. To watch full episodes, download the Stir app on your phone or on your Roku, Apple TV, or Fire. And if you want to hear more about our stories, check out our podcast, Full Measure After Hours, on your favorite distributor. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.